Hello, it's Kate from Zen Stitching, and I'm so pleased that you're here with us today for another one of our artist chats for the Making Zen series. Today, I'm thrilled to be joining Anne Smith from Persimmon Studio, who creates the most beautiful and delightful stitched birds. Hello and welcome.
Hello, great to be here.
And I'm so pleased that you're here. We always have such wonderful conversations, both on air and off air. And this is really fun because this is what our third chat, would you say?
I think so, yeah.
Yes. Yes. So it's always really lovely because this is one of my favorite parts of the whole event is to connect with other like-minded people and just talk about inspiration and what you've been up to and all that kind of great stuff. And for people who might be in meeting you for the first time, Anne, would you like to share a little bit about your artistic journey?
Happy to. It's kind of hard to encapsulate in a couple of sentences. I am kind of a lifelong stitcher and artistic person, like a lot of people that are here. And I am right now focusing on stitching birds. And I'm a bird watcher. I love to sit in my backyard and look at birds, and that's where I get the inspiration for my work. I am really dedicated to using fabric scraps and upcycled materials in everything that I do. And so that's a really important part of my artistic practice. I have all kinds of other things that I've done, and I'm constantly taking little creative detours, like I'm sure a lot of you are as well. But right now, it's just all about birds and nature for me.
Yeah, and they're absolutely delightful. The detail in them, the use of the fabric scraps to create a bird, like a collage pretty much, isn't it? It's a fabric collage, and then you come back in and you stitch on top of them.
That's right. Yeah, and the fabric is a huge inspiration for what I do as well. I have loads of fabric, and people are constantly giving me interesting little bits and pieces, and oftentimes that will inspire me as just as much as the birds do. There's
Mm.
all kinds of really great stuff that people toss away.
I know, that's right. And a little bit of a scrap can be turned into something so beautiful. It just needs the eye to see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I love hearing that you have all of these scraps, and that's what inspires your work. And then people give you more scraps, so that also inspires your work. I'm curious, do you have, because this is something that I'm constantly struggling with in my own studio, do you have a method for storing your scraps?
Well, that's a really good question. And people ask me that a lot. And I'm sitting in my studio right now, and you're looking at a tiny corner of it. If I turned the camera around, you would get a real glimpse of my organization or lack thereof. I'm constantly trying to figure out how to organize things. Um, and it's partly by I do it by the material. All of my wool I store in plastic locking tubs, just because I've learned from experience that I don't want to and get any moths in my house any more than I have. Um, but sometimes I will organize things by color, and it's constantly changing. And to be honest with you, I don't try to be too rigid about it, I guess, because I feel like sometimes the creative juices flow when I have things laying about in different piles and I can easily sort of move them around. So, I don't know if I'm trying to cover up for my lack of organization by saying that, but the truth is that I have kind of a love-hate relationship with organization, and I feel like a certain amount of it's good, because if everything is too cluttered, I start to get kind of bogged down by it. But when everything is too orderly, it sort of also interferes with my creative flow to some
Mm.
extent.
That's a really nice way of describing it because I am in the same box, so to speak. I love being organized and I love seeing nice, neat studios that other people have, but I can never do it myself. And partly I think because if I put something away, I forget about it. So I'd much rather leave it out and remember it.
So true.
Hmm. So yes, hence there's lots of UFOs that have been locked away in the cupboard. But the other reason why I like having things out, and I'm looking that way because that's where my messy workspace is over there, is I have found just through the way that I work is things, if I leave them out, automatically or naturally kind of feed into one another. And
Hmm.
you start making connections that you wouldn't put together unless those things were in your visual periphery, so to speak.
I agree with you 100%,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. And so I really like hearing that you have piles of fabric, and I'm hoping that maybe we might be able to have a sneak peek of your studio, but I also understand that that might be for another time.
If I could figure out how to do this and not give away too much. But I think that I think that probably a lot of us kind of come from the same place on this.
Mm,
Um, and, I go through sort of, I'll clean everything up and I'll feel like all ready to kind of jump in. And then I start getting things out, and very quickly things get messy again. But I agree with you what you're saying about the piles and sort of the things that you leave out and how they trigger something creatively. Like a lot of people that are here, I'm a very visual person, so I really rely on seeing things to spark something in my brain. So if you have everything all tucked away too much, I don't know where the inspiration comes from at that
mm.
point.
That's a really good point because one of the things or ways that I like to describe, particularly, I guess it's looking through magazines, Instagram to a lesser extent. I don't find that things stick so much, but magazines and reading books and kind of like looking at the visual on a hard copy, I always describe it as like feeding my brain. So you're putting all this input in and you letting
Mhm.
it percolate, and then out comes the magic through the fingers. And I think the things on the workbench are a similar kind of thing. It's an input visually, and then the output comes through the fingers.
Yeah, and it's really amazing how it works. Like when I'm doing one of my birds, I mean, a big part of it is the background, what the bird is going to be placed on top of. And people sometimes ask me, so how do you do that? And really, I can't even explain it. I look at the bird and I say, like, okay, I think these are the colors that might work with it. And then I will go to my, piles and bins of fabric and start pulling things out. And I'll end up with a pile of, I don't know, 15, 20 different pieces of fabric. And I work with scraps that I get. A lot of them come from a wonderful place called Fabmo here. And so they're already somewhat small. But anyway, I've got a pile of these things, and I just sit down at the table and I start putting them together in different combinations. Um, and it's just this really interesting kind of organic thing that happens. And I'll take pictures, I put the bird on it, and I take a look. Um, and something just starts happening. Like you
Mm,
say, it's magic, really.
it is. Yeah.
And it all starts with a pile of fabric.
That's it. And generally scraps, most of their fabrics that for a lot of people they've discarded, they think that they're no longer usable. And yet
Hmm.
these scraps are actually little bits of treasure, which I like to think of them as because
Yeah.
they're not a big piece of fabric, so you don't feel so bad about cutting into them. You don't think, oh, I have to save that for the perfect project. because they are cut
Mhm.
into, sometimes they have great shapes that you wouldn't think of putting in a piece of fabric. So I'd call, instead of they being scrap boxes, which what I used to call them, I now call them my treasure boxes because you never know what kind of fun treasures you're going to find when you ruffle through looking for something for a project.
No, it's the truth. And I work with very small bits of things, and so even the smallest thing can be used for what I do. I love to tell this story, which just really makes me kind of smile and warms my heart. A friend of mine came over one time for dinner, and she walks through the door and she presents me with two pieces that she had cut from her pants that she was wearing. They were too long for her, so she cut the hem off, and she said, "Here, can you use these for your birds?" And I thought it was just the cutest thing that, even that little thing that most people would throw in the trash, she thought, oh, maybe Anne can use it. And of course I did.
Yeah, that's it. That's even that makes it even more special because you've got the story that is associated with the fabric. So, say for example, your friend's name was Jane, you might say, well, they're birds that were inspired by Jane because she gave you the fabric. So there's Jane's birds, so to speak.
Well, and that is so true what you say. I mean, and every one of the birds that I have, I feel like it kind of tells a little story, not only about a bird, but about all the people whose fabric came together to create that piece of art. And every time I look at these things, I see it's just amazing to me how many generous people there are out there who are willing to share their little bits and pieces with me.
They are, and they are quite treasures as well. The their possibilities are endless, really, aren't they? When you start looking at them, not as a scrap of fabric, but the potential bit of a bird or a background or whatever kind of um, subject matter takes your fancy to work with them.
That's right.
Yeah, and so we're talking about kind of like magical treasures, jewels, and your bird of the moment is the hummingbird, which I would kind of categorize within those words. Having grown up in Australia, we didn't have hummingbirds, so the idea of these little cute little things that moved around so quickly was really quite appealing, because you couldn't experience them. What has kind of captured your fancy with the latest of your bird series being hummingbirds?
Well, hummingbirds are something that we see in our garden every day throughout the year. We're very lucky living in California that we have resident hummingbirds. A lot of people experience them more, during migration time or in the summer, winter, wherever you live. We have hummingbirds year round, and we have a garden. We've tried very hard to create a garden that's bird and pollinator friendly. And so I just, get to sit and watch these amazing birds
Mm.
every day. And they're just, I mean, all birds are magical in their own way. There's something about hummingbirds, I think, that captivates everybody, even
Mm.
people who've never seen them in real life. They're tiny, but they're mighty, and they are fast, and it's amazing to see them hover. I don't know. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And I have to say that um, in the workshops that I have done in my home and here on Making Zen, the one bird that people want above all other ones to learn how to do is a hummingbird. So I thought, well, okay, it's time to do a hummingbird. So that's what I'm doing. And the interesting thing is, I think everyone can kind of adapt this one to whatever hummingbird they want to do. It's not like the first time I did Making Zen, I did a robin. American robins, they pretty much look one way. Hummingbirds, there are loads of them, all different kinds of species. I can't remember how many there are, but there are hundreds of them. So you could really adapt this and even use your imagination if you want to create it to look how you want.
Yeah, yep. So you could create a magical bird kind of based on the idea of the hummingbird, but take it in your own direction, use the colors that you want and the fabrics that you want. And then it's a magical bird. Oh, how delightful. Watch out. And that's what you're teaching, isn't it, at the Making Zen retreat this time around? You're teaching how to make the hummingbirds.
I am, yes.
Yes. So that means we're going to see lots of magical hummingbirds being created.
Yeah, and again, I think what you're saying about it being something from your imagination would be really great too. So I'm hoping that with this one, it'll be really open-ended for people to learn the basics and kind of take it wherever you want to go with it.
Oh, that's really opening up all kinds of possibilities. And I know it will definitely open up all kinds of possibilities for everyone who participates because I just know from every event that we've had where you've been part of that our Facebook community just fills up with birds and then we see your birds being integrated onto other projects as well. So it's like birds are doing this and then there are other projects with birds on them as well. So it's a really fun way of kind of seeing your project being intertwined with other projects. So we're going to see magical birds entwined with all kinds of fun things.
Well, I hope so. I'm sure that will happen.
Oh, I'm sure it will too. And so I'm so looking forward to that. And one of the other birds that you taught was the blackbird. I think was that the last time or was that the
Yeah,
first
that
time?
was the last time.
Well, it was the last time. I came across this book. I haven't read it yet, but it's on my to read list. Have you heard of this, Mozart's Sterling?
No.
I thought of you. I got onto this through Amy Maracle, who is the Mindful Art Studio extraordinaire. And I'll read a little bit to you because I'm like, oh, this sounds like a really good book. On May 27, 1784, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart met a flirtatious little starling in a Viennese shop who sang an improvised version of the theme of his latest piano concerto. Sensing a kindred spirit in the young bird, Mozart took him home to be a family pet. So that's how it begins. But
Wow.
it's not a novel per se. It's a researched book about starlings. And so the author just happens to take in a starling and look after it while she's writing the book. And so she talks about her experiences.
That sounds like a good one. I'm going to have to check that out.
Yes, totally. Me too. So I'm looking forward to having a little bit of nighttime reading and snuggle up in bed and read that. It's fascinating, I think, because it's a bird that A is really pretty because that's what kind of got me thinking about it. You were talking about all the different colors that the sterlings have, but quite often it's a bird that because it's so common, we don't really give it much attention or
Yeah.
all that kind of thing. Kind of think maybe even it's considered a pest rather than something that we should appreciate. So I'm really interested to read what the book has to say.
Yeah. No, I'm going to definitely have to check that out. And I think what you're saying about the starling or the blackbird, same thing is true with robins. A few people have said to me in the past, like, why do you stitch ordinary birds? Which I mean, I kind of think the first time I heard that, I thought, what do you mean? Like, I think you stitch what kind of resonates with you. And for a lot of people, it is the ordinary birds, the birds that they see every day. Those are the ones that have meaning for them. So I don't know. I don't even understand why you wouldn't stitch something that's quote unquote ordinary.
Yeah, but they're so beautiful, and I guess that's the thing. Sometimes we just need to stop and appreciate them, I think, rather than rushing past them. And that perhaps is the beauty of being an artist and looking
Mhm.
at the world in a slightly different way, because you do take the time to create a garden that's bird friendly and then take the time to appreciate the birds. You, I imagine, may pick up appreciations that others don't simply because of your time spent with them.
Yeah, and interestingly, I think that every creature out there has something interesting about them. You know, with regard to blackbirds and that kind of bird, I know the first time I went to Mexico, we traveled at night and we got to the place we were staying and went to bed. And in the morning, I woke up and heard really the most beautiful bird song that I had ever heard in my entire life. And I thought, like, I wonder, you know, here I am in Mexico. It must be some amazing, beautiful bird. And I look out the window and it was a blackbird.
That's so.
Um, and it made me think about, you know, really how all the creatures out there, everything has something interesting about it. Sometimes you just have to stop and take a look or listen a little more closely to notice what it is.
It's so true. That's so true. We have a lot of deer in our yard, which is very beautiful, but can also be a bit painful at times because they like to eat my vegetable garden. And at
Mhm.
first there was this real kind of I had an internal struggle because I love having them around, but I really didn't appreciate having them eat all of my plants that, you spend a lot of time working on and growing and all that kind of thing. Um, but I came to realize that we could share the space, particularly if we had a fence.
Yeah.
And now I don't mind them so much. I actually appreciate them. And I appreciate them because I've had the opportunity to observe them. And they are incredibly intelligent animals. They figured out how to break into my vegetable garden, even with the fence. Not from jumping. They figured out if they leant on the fence enough, it would let
Oh,
them in.
wow.
I know. And so I have a lot of respect for deer, and that kind of flows into all animals because, like you say, everything has something beautiful to offer if we stop and appreciate it.
That's the truth. Right now, we've got yesterday I was sitting outside and we have a lot of flowers blooming, including our orange trees and our lemon tree are blooming right now. So there's a lot of bees buzzing around. And I noticed yesterday up in our persimmon tree, there's a swarm of bees that's buzzing around. And I'm thinking, on one hand, I'm like, I wonder what that's going to lead to, because it was a little bit like the bees are just buzzing around, crashing into us.
Mm.
But at the same time, I got out the binoculars and my daughter and I are looking up in the tree. And I mean, it was just fascinating to look at what was going on. We started reading about bee swarms and um, I don't know if they're going to be resident there or if they're just passing through, but it was very cool to watch. And um, I feel like a lot of times with the wildlife in our garden, it's I have to remind myself that as far as they're concerned, this is their garden as much as mine, you
Yes.
know? So trying to keep them out, we don't even really bother too much. We just try to coexist with everything. And it can be super frustrating when the few apples on your tiny tree that you just planted a couple years ago get eaten. But at the same time, I don't know. That's life.
Well, I guess if they're eaten by the birds, that to me I don't mind, but I find it so frustrating because in my house in Australia I planted like a jam garden on the side, and there's a quince
Mm.
tree, and there's a peach tree, and we've got a pomegranate bush, um,
Wow.
and yeah, so I love the sound. I want to add a persimmon tree. I just don't know if I have the space. But the quince tree is now some kind of insect has discovered it, so I can't get nice, beautiful quinces.
Mm.
Whereas I don't think I'd mind so much if the cockatoos and the galahs got to it. Isn't it funny the different kind of
Yeah.
things that we think, but the insects are entitled to them just as much as anything else.
But that can be very frustrating, isn't
Mm.
I mean, yeah. And we haven't had any big problems that way, knock on wood.
Yeah, that's right. Touch
So
wood.
we'll see.
Yeah.
But our big battle is with the squirrels. They're the worst.
Yes. They are, aren't they? They're cute, but they can also be a problem.
That's for sure.
Now, it sounds like you might have a love-hate relationship with them.
For sure, for sure.
Mhm.
Maybe I should stitch one.
You know what? You probably should. You probably change your
For
whole
sure.
attitude around it if you sat and stitched a squirrel.
Yes, I
Yeah.
might.
Yeah. It's quite interesting, actually. That makes me think of something when I went down a rabbit hole of learning jewelry, and I did a jewelry intensive workshop in the Netherlands for a week. But it wasn't actually jewelry making, it was more the conceptual creation behind it. So it was a week of, we went water divining in a church to kind of find the energy spots, and we did a whole lot of fun stuff, but that was just one of the amazing experiences. And at the end, the artist who led it, Ruud Peters was his name, he gave everyone a little bit of homework if they wanted it, to kind of like continue pushing yourself to be creative and go to new places. And quite often he would give you homework that was confronting. So for one person, uh, not making ugly art. It was more specific than that. I think it had to be ugly flowers. So he had to set
Wow.
himself a challenge to make, I think it was 100 different versions of ugly flowers or something like that. And so anyway, the fellow took this challenge on, and he said, by the end of it, I actually really like ugly flowers. Or it really changed his whole perception on doing something. So he managed to find the beauty within something that he initially thought was ugly.
How interesting.
Yes. So I'll be curious to know if we meet next, if you've stitched a squirrel.
Well, I'm thinking, yeah, that got me thinking. Maybe I should. I've been thinking for a while about maybe trying to do some other kind of creature. I mean, I sometimes do butterflies. The bird thing, it just goes on and on and on and on. But yeah, I think there's something with that squirrel.
Yeah. I'm really curious because now that's got me thinking down a different path, which is where I did another day of art drawing, and we were on it's actually called Cockatoo Island. I think it's in Sydney Harbour. And Cockatoo Island used to be a place where the convicts went, the really, really naughty convicts went, because it was in the harbour and it was surrounded by sharks. So, it was a very off-putting place to be. And over time, it turned into like a shipyard. So there's all these very masculine-looking shapes, and lots of harsh lines and architecture and that kind of thing, lots of geometric shapes. And I got really frustrated trying to draw these scenes. And the teacher said, you know what? We all have, he called it drawability. We all have objects and shapes that we really enjoy drawing, and we find that they come to us so much easier. And then there are other shapes that we just wrestle with. And I'm like, yeah, I think that's a very good observation. So, with that in mind, I'd be curious to know whether you enjoyed doing this squirrel thing, Or you're
Yeah.
like, I can't do the squirrel because the birds bring you so much joy, from the whole experience of watching them, listening to them, and being in the same space.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I think you're hitting on something too that is I feel like when I sit down to do something new, there's always kind of that feeling of, well, is this going to work? Am I going to do it right? And will I be successful? Maybe it won't look right. And I know a lot of people wrestle with these kinds of
Mm,
ideas, and we're all a little bit different in terms of sort of the expectations we put on ourselves, and um, what we hope to produce. If is it more about what we're going to produce, or is it more about the process? And everybody's kind of different about how they do that. I happen to be the kind of person that really enjoys the sort of open-endedness of something new.
mm,
There's no preconceived idea because I've never done it before. And so that I find that really kind of exciting.
mm,
And for me, I don't have like a business that depends on me producing something at the end. So it's very fun, I have to say, to like the idea of a squirrel. Wow, I think I'm probably, after we're done talking, I'm probably going to sit down and gather a bunch of fabric and kind of see where that leads. And it's kind of exciting to think about it. I think it's really important. And one of the things I hope that I'll talk about when I, you know, record myself for Making Zen is just to remind people that it's it's kind of important to give yourself a pass sort of on what it is that you're producing, and try to sort of not have any expectations for it and just kind of see what happens.
mm,
And when you can do that, I feel like a lot of times things just have a way of unfolding, which is maybe surprising a little bit and exciting and very satisfying if you can just hold off on too much judginess
mm.
about it and just kind of try it out and learn from it. And the first time is never necessarily the most successful in sort of the traditional way of looking at success, but it's often very successful in terms of figuring things out and learning from it.
Yeah.
Um, and I love that. I just one of those people that I really enjoy learning new things and trying out new things. So I'm excited about this squirrel idea. Thank you.
You're
Thank
most
you for
welcome.
putting that in my head.
Well, I'm excited for you too, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what the outcome is going to be from the discussion because everything that you touch is very beautiful. So I'll be interested to see the outcome and also hear of the thought process behind the making whilst you're doing it. Going back to what you were talking about with the creative process itself and taking that pressure off, I think is a really important thing for us all to remember that it's not serious and it can be fun and we should consider it playing. And I think that light-hearted approach, I know because we all put so much pressure on ourselves because we want it to look good and we want it to, look like the example that we're making or whatever it might be. But to kind of take a step back and just say, well, you know what? If it doesn't turn out the way I'm hoping, then there's going to be a lot of opportunity for learning within it. Because often,
Yeah.
yeah, the mistakes is where the fun stuff happens or where you learn. And yeah.
No, I think it's true of anything, right? There's nothing you can do in life where you sit down and do it perfectly the first time. I mean, you're not learning anything new if that's what's happening. And I think there's the temptation to want something to look the same way as the sample or whatever the person's teaching you is showing you. but then it's not really yours
Mm,
anyway. And why would you want to just recreate something that is somebody else's? I don't personally understand that. I think to me, it's more about learning techniques and then applying them to your own, in your own way, to your own artwork and seeing where that leads you.
mm,
So I just, I feel like that is kind of at the core of this. So I really hope that anybody who decides to stitch a hummingbird with me will just sort of, try to keep an open mind and figure out, what that means to them and just truly have fun with it. That's the most important part of this.
mm. Such great advice. And that's a really wonderful way. Usually, when we wrap up our conversations, I ask if you have any wise words of advice that you'd like to share with everyone. But I think you've hit the nail on the head by saying that what you have done and making it your own, learn the techniques, and then apply it to either the birds that are in your neck of the woods, or even other wildlife, or other objects that you might wish to stitch, taking the idea of the collage and the stitch and the joyfulness that it can bring.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I feel like when I look at some of the people that I know that I have taught my techniques to, and I see what they have done and how they have their own sort of style and they've applied it in their own way, that is where the real joy comes from it, is when it's really your own thing
Mm.
that you are doing.
Yeah, and that in itself is such a delight, isn't it? When you can see that you've inspired others and they've taken the idea and made it theirs and are running with it. It's a beautiful, beautiful thought. And we keep returning to this analogy when I speak to everyone. It's like a rock in a still pond. You throw the rock in and the ripples go outwards of all these beautiful, inspirational, creative moments that we share with everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, I love that analogy.
it's beautiful, isn't it? I can envision it right now. It's so beautiful. And thank you so much for your time today. As always, it's an absolute pleasure talking to you. I would love to talk to you all day, but it sounds like you have a squirrel to stitch.
That's right.
And I'm so looking forward to your workshop, even during our conversation, where you're talking about sharing how to make a hummingbird, stitch a hummingbird. I'm thinking how I could apply this to the beautiful birds in Australia that are near and dear to my heart, and then just have all the other things you could possibly do. We mentioned earlier that Kiko stole the show earlier, and so why not try it with a favorite furry?
Yeah.
Yeah, as well. So
Lovely to talk to you, Kate.
yeah, I know. All right, pressure's on. I'll see what I
Yes,
can
I
do.
can't wait to see that.
Okay, that sounds like a good challenge. I'll take that up. Thank you for joining me in this creative journey. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And if you'd like to learn more about Making Zen, please check out the links below where you can find out all about the workshops and creativity, community, and all that kind of good stuff. Wishing you many happy hours of stitching.